Now to tonight's special report about the looming crisis in Australia's power supply. One of the nation's largest sources of electricity, Victoria's Hazelwood power station, is being switched off at the end of the month. When news of the shutdown broke last November, the wholesale power price jumped across the 4 states connected to the national electricity market. That's because Hazelwood creates 5.5% of the nation's power and 22% of Victoria's. This week, we've heard plans from South Australia about a new gas-fired power station and the Turnbull government's $2 billion upgrade for the Snowy Hydro scheme. But it could be years before both come online, and the pressure to find enough power to stabilise the grid ahead of next summer is mounting. Here's political editor Chris Uhlmann.
Hazelwood in the brown coal fields of Victoria's Latrobe Valley is a big engine on one of the largest interconnected power grids in the world.
When people go to the toilet in the middle of the night and flick that light switch, they don't give a thought to what's happening in the background. But in the background, we're working there.
Few would better understand the risks raised by switching off 5% of the national power supply than Hazelwood unit controller Mark Richards.
The real issue will be next summer. There's already projections from AEMO showing that there's going to be large energy shortfalls.
With Hazelwood's exit, the market operator expects dangerously low power reserves for Victoria from December, and the picture is worse in South Australia.
That's a very fragile setup. If anything goes wrong, if an interconnector fails or is switched off, if generating units can't meet their maximum output, we start risking blackouts.
That's a direct threat to households and jobs.
To stop production through lack of energy is just a disaster.
A leading food manufacturer says his industry is already reeling from spiralling power bills.
We can't afford to let customers down, we can't afford to turn machinery off. So that becomes a real problem when you say, will we invest in something further, will we put more machinery into Australia? The answer's got to be no until we know that's not going to happen.
Nearly a decade of carbon pricing battles has helped fuel market chaos. Hazelwood will be the 9th coal generator to shut since 2012, but investors won't risk building new gas-fired baseload without a clear direction from government.
The sector's almost uninvestable at this point.
Jeff Dimery closed the last coal-fired power station in South Australia and predicted the chaos that would follow. He says thermal power is the grid's backbone, and it also supports the technical limitations of renewables.
Absent massive amounts of storage in the market so that you can store up that energy when it's produced and then release it when it's demanded from consumers, we have a problem.
He believes the solution to Australia's energy crisis starts with a price on carbon, but the baseload investment strike won't end until the political brawl does.
A detailed plan around energy for the future needs to be signed off by both the government and the opposition.
But in the ideological war zone of energy, cooperation is a distant dream.
It is a disgrace the way in which your government has treated our state.
Just shows you, unfortunately, how desperate he is.
No one has their hands on the steering wheel anymore. And this is some of the...
Cheryl Ragg is a consumer energy advocate and a lifelong resident of the Latrobe Valley. She traces Australia's energy crisis to privatisation. The call to close Hazelwood was made with little notice by 2 foreign-owned companies.
In the boardrooms of Engie in Paris and in Tokyo for Mitsui, they have made a decision to close down Hazelwood Power Station, and we have no control over that.
The first investment.
Last week, the South Australian and Commonwealth governments belatedly stepped back into the marketplace, and more intervention is on the cards. But there's little chance of new generation entering the market by summer. This is the disorganised disconnection of a power supply without any new generation ready to take its place. In the short term, there are only 2 certainties. The electricity system will become less reliable and power prices will rise.
When you reduce your generators and you shorten the market, in any market, when you're the last person selling ice creams, those prices go up.
Wholesale power prices spiked across South Australia and the East Coast as soon as Hazelwood's closure was announced.
These big increases make a hell of a big difference.
Like power generation, many domestic food manufacturers also have foreign owners, and they are weighing their options.
You know, there's not a heck of a lot of sentiment in a lot of these internationally managed companies. They go where it makes sense, and if it's not going to make sense here, they leave.
Energy experts are growing increasingly anxious.
Very large renewable targets will not solve this problem. Building new coal-fired or offering to build new coal-fired power stations will not solve this problem. In the short term, we need two things. We need access to gas and the ability to build gas baseload generators.
We face a crisis.
The Prime Minister has moved to get more gas into the market, but at what price?
The answers are not difficult. The answers are just expensive.
Cheryl Ragg believes the environment movement also has a case to answer. She was disendorsed as a Greens candidate in 2010 for saying renewables weren't ready to cover the gap left by Hazelwood.
People in Melbourne have gone along and in fact applauded poor system design, have welcomed it and have pushed for it. Well, now they've got it.
The old power warhorse will close in 2 weeks. Chris Uhlmann, ABC News, Canberra.